23 minutes past 8, a judge said it was the worst case of coercive and controlling behaviour in a relationship that she'd ever seen. And she sentenced domestic abuser Sheree Spencer to 4 years in prison earlier this year.
Well, after meeting in a nightclub when they were both in their 20s, Richard Spencer and his wife, Sheree, enjoyed some happy times, but it wasn't long at all before things began to turn sour, very sour. And a short warning here, you're about to see just some of the injuries that Richard sustained at the hands of the woman who technically is still his wife.
Over their years together, she verbally, emotionally and physically abused Richard on countless occasions and even threatened him with a knife. Well, Richard joins us now alongside Mark Brooks, chair of men's domestic abuse charity Mankind. Good morning to both of you.
Morning, both.
Richard, it's very brave of you to speak out about this. I can imagine that after 2 decades of being coerced, controlled, assaulted, physically abused, threatened with a knife, you probably feel quite sensitive, still perhaps a little bit intimidated. How do you feel now that your wife has been convicted and imprisoned?
I guess when I was in the courtroom and I heard the sentence, I didn't really have that many emotions, really. The most strongest word I would say is probably acceptance, in that the sentence could have been a lot longer, but it could have been also a lot shorter. And because the court case had gone for, the criminal side of things for about 2 years, I just wanted it to be over with so many endless delays, really.
We know that overwhelmingly domestic abuse is man on woman, husband on wife, male on female partner. We know that's the norm, which is what makes your story so unusual. And the question, of course, that many people will be asking this morning is, how did you put up with it for so long? I mean, 20 years. Why did you stick it that long?
Yeah, I mean, it's because it's such a complex situation. It's hard to put it into a few words. So
I'm sure.
I think probably the key thing to get across is how incremental it was. So it started off with, like, minor things like pushing and then slapping and, quite abusive shouting. But those things were sort of things that were normalised. It's things that you'd see every day, like in a soap opera. It wouldn't be out of the norm for a lady to slap a man on television, so I didn't really think much of it. Then over time it got worse and worse, but she was always really apologetic. She would say how sorry she was the next day and tell me she loves me and even write notes saying that we're soulmates and things like that.
Why do you think she was doing it? I know that's a hard question.
Yeah, I think it almost became like when the violence got really worse, it was almost like a coping mechanism I found. So when she was going through things that were difficult for her to deal with, she would drink or she would do various things, but I think it almost became like a coping mechanism, something that she had control over. She could control over what she did to me, but not control things that were going on in her life at the minute.
Just explain how difficult it is for a man to speak up about this, for you. Because I think there's an assumption, isn't it, as Richard said, that it's women who are generally the victims in these cases, and that's what stats say. Does that make it harder as a man to...
I think it's probably hard for anyone to disclose what's been going on, because I kept it a secret, for 20 years. I didn't tell anyone. But I think there's like you say, there's a different element to it in that I'm bigger and stronger than her, and I could physically stop the violence if I wanted to by restraining her, for example. But then, at some point you've always got to let go, and then it would be worse. So I guess there is a stigma of not really wanting to tell your friends that a lady could do something to
Also, it's interesting you mentioned that, because there was at least one occasion, wasn't there, when she claimed that you were the abuser. That she opened a window and shouted, "I'm being assaulted." And that's the trouble with the stats, is that becomes the assumption.
Yeah, she did make those kind of threats quite a lot. Yeah, she would open the window and shout out, "Richard, stop hitting me, you're hitting me," and then close the window and tell me that how clever she was and that I would never be able to beat her if you like.
Well, you made some videos. And you had those photographs that we've seen there. And finally, you confided in a friend, a good friend, who said to you, "Up with this you must not put. You have to get the police involved." It was your friend who persuaded you. And what, I wouldn't say gratified you, that's the wrong word, but what relieved you was that the police took it seriously.
They did take it
seriously. They believed you.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. That's right, yeah. I mean, they did take it seriously, but I would say that one of the reasons for that is because there was so much evidence, and I think perpetrators are, like, really convincing liars. And if I didn't have the evidence that I did, it was my word against hers.
But they were sympathetic to you, that's the point.
No, no, they were very
You were
sympathetic,
nervous that they wouldn't be, that they would be dismissive.
Right,
can't you take care of yourself and all that kind of stuff? But they were actually very sympathetic.
Right from the start, every single officer from Humberside Police that were involved were very empathic and really listened.
When you found out, didn't you, about the moment that police showed your wife the video that you had taken, where she was holding a knife to your throat?
Yes.
She had the most bizarre explanation for that, didn't she?
Yeah, so originally they played the video without the sound, and the kid said, "Can you explain what's happening?" And she said, "Well, at that point, I'm telling Richard that I want a divorce and I don't want to be with him anymore. I can't stand my life with him. So I'm saying, if you won't let me divorce, if you won't divorce me, then you may as well kill me." So she was saying, she was giving me the knife to say, "Look, I can't take it anymore. You may as well kill me if you're not going to let me have a divorce."
And then the actual sound, audio of the video.
Yeah, and then when they played the real audio, and she was saying things like, "Oh, it's a shame it takes this level of violence to make you see," and things like that, and holding up the knife as a threat, then she just kind of shrugged her shoulders and said, "Well, there's not much I can say."
And just before we bring Mark in here, just last question to you. When you were so many times in the fetal position on the floor, curled up in a ball that she's assaulting you, sometimes with a wine bottle, she permanently damaged your ear with an attack with a wine bottle. What was going through your mind?
Well, the main thing was I would get into that position because I wanted to protect my face so I could still take the children to school and to nursery. That was the main thing that was going on in my mind. And I was in the back of my mind just wondering where the children were and that they were OK.
Dear, oh dear, oh dear.
And how are your kids? Are they all right?
The kids are doing really well, actually.
Tough for them.
They're really resilient, but you know, finding out that the mum's gone to prison wasn't the best thing to find out. But the eldest one got a little bit upset the first time I told her. Obviously, the kids have talked about it a little bit at school, but they've been really resilient and they've coped really well.
I don't want to talk in detail about the children, obviously for their own protection. But are they young or?
Yeah, the youngest is 4 next month, and the
Right.
other two are 5 and 7.
Very difficult. And when people ask why didn't you leave, that's one of the reasons, Mark, isn't it?
Yes.
You're from Mankind. It focuses on male victims of domestic violence. Every case should be taken seriously, shouldn't it? And I think it's incredible what Richard's doing. And I'm sure many men feel in the same situation. They cannot speak out. They're afraid of losing access to the children. They're afraid they're the one who's going to be accused of the violence. They're afraid that their abuser is going to twist what happened, like Richard's wife did with the video.
And that's certainly a common theme on our helpline, and we take calls every day from men in that situation. I think the key message for us, though, is that the police will take you seriously, that we really want to pull a message out to friends and family and work colleagues to look out for men who potentially could be and are victims of domestic abuse. And, you know, whilst men are going through this every day, also many men are escaping from domestic abuse every day. So having that real sense of hope and support is really important.
What about their emotional state? I mean, we know that women who are assaulted by their male partners can feel shame and almost guilt and embarrassment about what's happening, and which is why they don't confide in people, even close friends and family. Is it the same for men who are being assaulted by their female partners, or is it worse because they're men and they feel that they should be able to protect themselves more? Well,
broadly it's the same, but there is this enhanced sense of I'm being undermined because I'm actually a man, and also the fear of not being believed or taken seriously because I am a man, and so therefore there are those differences.
Extra dimensions.
Yeah, there's extra dimensions. I don't want to take anything away from any female
Of course not at all. No.
But there are those particular dimensions that really affect men, especially, as Richard says, height difference as well. We get 6'2" guys ringing up. Their female partners are 5'5". That really kind of enhances their own sense of shame, but also worries them that how are they going to convince anybody else that they're actually a victim of domestic abuse.
Mark, Richard, thank you so much. Such an important issue. And as you say, it doesn't take away from the fact that, you know, any case of domestic violence, no matter the gender, should be taken absolutely equally seriously and treated the same. Thank you so much.